Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 802B. And today's date is October 27th, 2015. And the title of this episode is U.S. Forces Will Begin Direct Action in Syria and Iraq. World War III is Upon Us. Now, before I get started, I just want to make an announcement. Tomorrow, Wednesday, I'll be uploading an interview with John Rubino. If you are on the X22Report.com email alert system, you will get an email. If you signed up to YouTube on the X22 Report Spotlight YouTube channel, YouTube should send you an email. If not, you can come right over to YouTube, type in X22 Report Spotlight. You will see the video, or you can come over to the X22Report.com site, scroll down a little bit, and you'll see the video on the right-hand side. Let's get into the economic collapse, political, and geopolitical news. Now, up to this point, we realize the NSA, FBI, CIA, the police are all spying on the American people. One way or another, through backdoors or the use of the Stingray device, which now the Secret Service is using, they are all spying on the American people. But what's very interesting is that the Internal Revenue Service is now also using the Stingray device, surveilling people, listening in on their cell phone conversations. The question is, why? Why do they have the authority to spy on the American people? Well, they don't. Again, this is a violation of the Fourth Amendment. But of course, the Stingray device is kept a secret. They don't want people to know who has it, who's using it. And it looks like the IRS is spying on the American people to look for those people who owe money. Remember, the U.S. government, even though the IRS is really not part of the U.S. government, they're looking for revenue. This is why they created Obamacare. This is why they have FATCA. This is why they're trying to impose a carbon tax on the people. They need revenue to keep this system alive. And they're doing whatever they possibly can to find this revenue. But guess what? It's not out there. The debt has gotten so large, and the funds that are out there that the U.S. everyday person has cannot support this system. And everything they're trying to do is not working. And what's going to happen is the revenue coming into the government is going to continually decrease. Think about it. If everyone has been losing their jobs, because we know since last June of 2014, heading into this December of 2015, there's going to be almost 1 million people who've been laid off. We know that since 2008, there's been like 1.4 million people that lost their manufacturing jobs. And they've been replaced by about 1.5 million temporary jobs. So if you take a full-time job of $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 and you replace these jobs with temp jobs, you have less taxable revenue. So the revenue coming into the government is continually declining, not increasing. This is why they're pushing more of these types of programs to try to bring in revenue. Backdoor taxes. This is why the IMF is saying maybe we should tax everyone's wealth by 10% to pay off this debt. Maybe, as Christine Lagarde says, we should impose the carbon tax right now because this is the perfect time, and we can use those funds to pay off this huge debt problem. This is the whole point of it. They want your money because they realize this whole system's coming crashing down. Now, the FBI is out there, and they have set up a warning about anarchists plot to ambush cops this Halloween. The FBI on Monday issued a warning to police departments nationwide of a potential plot by an anarchist group to ambush cops on Halloween. The group, known as National Liberation Militia, has said they're going to have a Halloween revolt, encouraging their members to dress in costumes. Of course, since this is perfect during Halloween because if we really think about it, and we've seen this before, where there's agent provocateurs actually causing the problems, just like in Ferguson, where there were police officers dressed up as protesters, and you always can spot them because they always have the black masks. They're always blocking their face so you can't recognize them. They were the ones throwing the rocks. So this Halloween season, if something should happen, everyone will be in costume, where you will not be able to see who's who. And all they need to do is take the agent provocateurs, put them into a certain group, and have them start whatever they're going to start. And what they're saying is that this group, this so-called group, they should all bring weapons like bricks and firearms. So we can see that this could possibly be a setup to put the people and the police against each other. And we need to watch this very, very carefully. Hopefully nothing occurs during this holiday season, this Halloween season, this weekend. But we're going to have to keep an eye on this to make sure that that there aren't any type of agent provocateurs actually starting the problems. Now, out in Afghanistan, we now understand that the U.S., NATO, they are not leaving Afghanistan. Actually, what's going to happen later on, they're going to bring in more troops into this area because we know this is an area they are never going to leave. Now, the UK is saying they are not leaving Afghanistan either. Defense Secretary Michael Fallon said to the Parliament on Tuesday, "We have now concluded that we will stay in Afghanistan through 2016. They all understand what's happening. We are headed towards World War III. Now, the United States is sailing their destroyer near the Spratly Archipelago to provoke China. This is all being done on purpose. The question is why? Well, they want China to do something. Now, will China do something? Well, we're seeing they have done absolutely nothing. Well, this is how provoking works. You provoke today, just like they did with sailing the ships. They provoke by telling them that they're cyber attacking the United States. You provoke them by some other reason, and you continually do this until China basically can't take it anymore or reacts to one of the provocations and does something. And then the corporate media here in the United States will then report on what China did. Of course, they will never show anything leading up to this where the United States was continually provoking them. They will say, oh, China shot across a U.S. vessel's bow or stern or whatever they want to say. And that will be all over the corporate media, and it will look like to the American people that China is attacking the United States. This is how the United States government central bankers work. And we see this is not just with China. This is with Russia, with North Korea, with Iran, with Syria, with Ukraine, and the southeastern people, in Africa. It's all the same. There's no difference here. Now, out in Ukraine, we see the Kiev forces are shelling the Donetsk airport once again. So the ceasefire is holding when Poroshenko needs to give a speech or tell everyone that it is holding, and then goes out and decides, okay, now we need to provoke the southeastern people one more time. And every time, think about it, every time Kiev decides to shell these areas, what is the other side going to do? Well, they're going to ramp up their military forces, bring some of their larger weapons to the front. And then Kiev can say, see, they brought their weapons back to the front. Why did they do this? Of course, the corporate media didn't report on Kiev shelling them. Again, this is how it works. Now it looks like the U.S. ally Saudi Arabia has bombed another hospital, but this time it was in Yemen. And the hospital in Yemen was hit by several airstrikes last night with patients and staff inside. And the air raids resulted in the destruction of the entire hospital with everything that was inside. And there was no combatants. There was nothing but patients and doctors. And they went ahead and destroyed and killed and injured people, just like in Afghanistan. Now, the United States government, the corporate media, the other coalition forces are continually pushing the idea that Russia has hit a hospital in Syria, has hit civilians and killed them. Of course, as we know, it's actually what the United States is doing in other countries and in Syria. But they keep pushing the idea that Russia is doing this because they're trying to demonize Russia right now, because what they're really doing is destroying the proxy army for the United States government central bankers. And Russia has had enough of this. And the Russian Ministry of Defense has summoned military attaches of NATO countries and Saudi Arabia, asking the officials to clarify their country's allegations. Basically what they're saying, you're spewing propaganda, and now it's time for you to prove that we've hit a hospital and we've killed civilians. Show us your proof. And guess what? So far, there has been no proof shown. Of course, the United States is out there. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry, Ashton Carter, NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg, UK Defense Secretary Michael Fallon, and France's Minister of Defense are all out there saying, yes, Russia, they're killing people. They're hitting hospitals. And Russia is saying from each one of these countries, please provide us with the proof. Because you're telling the world that we're doing this. Show us the satellite photos. Show us the drone photos. Show us anything that proves this. Where are you getting this information? And of course, none of the countries can provide any type of proof. It's almost like Ukraine, when they continually said Russia is invading, Russia is invading. They have thousands of tanks, thousands of troops, and we know the satellites were right above, and we know they gave crisp color photos, and of course they gave us those fuzzy black and white 1970 photos with Photoshop and squiggly lines because they had no proof. Of course, when Russia had fighter jets in Syria, you notice how the satellite images were color, and you can see detail on the runway. Actually, you could read the runway print. And this is how you know something is fake and not fake. Right now, they cannot provide any proof. So what is it? It's all propaganda. Why? They're trying to shift focus off of what the United States and the coalition forces are doing in other areas and trying to say, look, Russia is hitting civilians also. No, they're not. Look, Russian weapons can't even hit their targets. Yes, they did. They asked for proof of that. Where did these missiles fall in Iran? Show us a satellite photo, please. Nothing. Crickets. This is how you know it's fake. Just because a country or a government says something doesn't mean it's true. Let them back it up with proof. And most of the time, they can't, because it's all propaganda. Now, Russia and the Syrian armed forces are pushing the Islamic State out of Aleppo, and this is huge because they are pushing them back. And once they get Aleppo, this is a huge strategic win for Russia and the Syrian army, which means that they're going to be going into many different areas and continually pushing east. And this is hugely troubling to the United States right now. So what is the United States prepared to do? Well, one U.S. top general is saying that we need to bring troops into Iraq. Ashton Carter is saying, we have indicated that we have an obligation, and they always use this, we have options to protect our people that we have trained against attack. We have a right to defend our paid mercenaries, our terrorists in Syria. Think about what they're saying. But they always use this. We have every right to defend them. Well, they're paid mercenaries. They're terrorists, which you're using to invade a country to remove a government. Actually, this is an act of war. No, you don't have the right. Actually, the United States government, central bankers, they're in the wrong. So Defense Secretary Ashton Carter says the U.S. will begin direct action on the ground against the Islamic State forces in Iraq and Syria. You know what's happening here, don't you? The United States is going to be bringing boots into Syria and into Iraq. Ground troops. Ladies and gentlemen, everyone that's listening right now, this is going to be the start of World War III. Because you know they're not going to be fighting the Islamic State. Because there's the Syrian army and there is Russia. And if the United States brings in troops, this whole thing is going to be blown out of proportion. And we're going to see the start of World War III. Will it start tomorrow? No, but down the line, as troops continually flow into these countries, the situation will get worse and worse and worse. Obama right now is considering moving U.S. forces deeper into Syria and Iraq. We understand and we know what's happening here. Everything is in motion. We are headed towards World War III. Now, the U.S. intelligence continually is telling us that China, Russia, North Korea are going to be waging cyber attacks against the United States. And this is to build up the idea that Russia, China, North Korea, Iran, Syria, any other country that's part of the BRICS system will be attacking the United States. Right now they're focused on Russia and China, maybe North Korea. And they're continually saying this, not that they're going to do it right this second, but they want the idea to seep into the American people's minds. And they continually repeat this over and over and over, so you know who the enemy is going to be. So you know when this event occurs, you know who it is. Because you know as soon as it happens, they're going to tell you within an hour who it was. And you know that's completely impossible. And whenever the U.S. government comes out and says, okay, we just had a cyber attack, it was North Korea, and it happened an hour ago, do you know how hard it is to track down an advanced actor who is actually cyber attacking? Because they can bounce their attacks off of many servers, and really you only get the last attack of where it came from. And anybody could set up a server. And first of all, what advanced actor would ever attack from their country? They wouldn't. It wouldn't even make sense. And this is how you know that this is a lie. Because if this was true and everyone can track everything down so quickly, you would have no spam. They would know where all this is coming from. This is how you know it's fake, phony, and false. But right now, U.S. intelligence, the director, is saying that the Chinese People Liberation Army is dedicated to waging cyber warfare against the United States. What is their goal? Their goal is knocking out, now get this, American infrastructure that is vital to the nation's survival. They're talking about the power grid. So the director of national intelligence, James Clapper, is saying that China's whole entire goal is knocking out the power grid, the infrastructure. Now he wants this in your heads. He wants you to understand what is going to happen here. Now, I was in New York in 2003 when the power went out. The power went out on the East Coast, and I was in Manhattan. And let me just say, if this went on longer than 2 days, people would get very, very nervous. And people would not react the way they did when this went down. Most of the people were friendly in the beginning. And then people were getting antsy, and the power came on the next day or two. If this went 4, 5, 6, maybe 10, 11, 12 days, I think people's moods would change dramatically. I think people would get very scared. And I do believe that was a test. They always seem to test these things ahead of time. And they wanted to see, was it possible to bring down the power grid? I know there was a lot of other stories, but I really think that this was a test, because now we're getting the information that our power grid is vulnerable at this time. And he went on to say that if or when China disrupts the entire power, when they disrupt the U.S. power grid for a prolonged period of time, he believes that this would kill up to 90% of Americans. I mean, think about what he's saying here. They are letting you know that they are setting up a false flag event. Same thing with Russia cutting the communication cable under the sea. Now, they have no proof that Russia's going to do this. They have no evidence that they're actually going to do this. This was just a story. But they want this information in your head. They actually named the Chinese unit that's going to do this. Unit 61398. This unit is ready to strike. They've been trained. They are ready. So what do we have here? We have them telling us that Russia has planted a malware into the financial system. It could be hidden someplace. They don't know for sure. Russia could cut the communication cable under the sea, which would devastate the economy of America. And China could hit the power infrastructure and bring down the power grid, and a lot of people would die. The Islamic State, or any other terrorist organization, would then handle the physical attacks on the United States. They are building up this scenario to convince everyone that it's an outside force that is attacking the United States. Remember, they need to trick the American people into going to war. They can't say, well, our economy is, falling apart and we have no other alternative but to start a war to save the economy. We're doing it for the central bankers. No one would buy this. But to make it look like it's coming from another country or another group, yes, they can sell this to the American people, and this is what they're planning on. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.